Do people get the pre-work sort of exercises I sent out? Okay. I won't be grading them now. Yeah, you know, my objective isn't to be trying to turn everybody into clones of the way I paint, or to have you paint totally different from your current style. Basically, think of this as I'm showing you a whole series of tricks, and if you can adopt a few of them for what you do, that's what you really want to get out of the workshop.
Right.
Okay, I mean, some people come into a workshop thinking, oh, I'll be a totally different painter when I come out, and we hope not, really. What you want to be is what you wanted to do before, but maybe a little better, because you have a few more tricks in your bag. And I have certain ways of approaching things, partly because I'm impatient, partly because I like to make money at it, you know.
My kind of man.
My daughter is an illustrator, and she uses all sorts of shortcuts, photoshopping, and there's no rules in illustration. She does great watercolor paintings, but once she gets to working on a book cover, all the rules are out the window. And I'm more of a painting purist, although I have to admit I'm going to have to learn Photoshop because it's a much easier, it's an easier way to lay out compositions and play with compositions. I'm sure a lot of you know when you approach some strange subject, you do a lot of little practice sketches, different croppings, different colors, change sizes, shapes, so on and so on. Boy, you can do that on a computer a heck of a lot faster than you can do it by hand. And my daughter has finally taught me that that's actually not cheating. And right now I'm drawing a horizon line. You all have a copy of this reference photo, right? And, I draw pretty lightly so it doesn't show up on the paper too much. If I had a ruler, I might use it. I don't, you know, it's not a big problem there.
What brush are you using, David?
I'm using a mechanical pencil that costs 15 cents from Walgreens. I like mechanical pencils because obviously they stay sharp, and there's an unlimited supply of lead. You don't run out. And so I usually keep a stack of about 20 or 30 of them around pretty much anywhere I go. And I think I'm going to move the horizon down a little bit. I tend to sort of play with the composition. You know, you see a lot of bumper stickers, you know, about Glass Cutters bumper stickers, you know, one good store is worth 1,000 nickels and things like that. I always thought I would have one made up that says landscape painters move mountains.
Oh, I would buy that. I would so buy that.
Because in fact, I do that a lot. I'll move mountains. I'll put in clouds, move waves, everything to try to build a structure up in the painting that wasn't there to start with, but turns it from a kind of a frequently boring photograph into an image that sticks in people's minds. What I'm doing with this one, I've kept the horizon in about the same place. I frequently will put the horizon smack in the middle of the painting, which drives purists crazy. You're not supposed to do that, but I'll explain later why that's not usually a good problem. Now this particular picture, I think what I'm going to do, the right side of the picture as I look at it is a little bit on the boring side. There's kind of nothing much happening back there. It's distant hills and so forth and so on. The left side of the picture is where all the interest is. But if I just sort of expand it, it's gonna it's gonna run off the top of the painting. I think I'll come as close to the top as I can. I'll make it a little bigger. What I'll do is sort of pretend that my little boat was closer to this rock formation on the left. It's gonna be a little bit larger, take up a little more room on the painting. So I'm distorting the picture a little bit. And I'm also distorting the perspective on this, so instead of just a hump and coming back down, if I were closer to this rock, the left-hand side rock would look a little bit higher from my closer vantage point. So I'm going to raise that up a little bit. So basically what I'm doing is accentuating the left-hand side of the picture where I think the fun things are. This painting is at the mouth of the San Juan River, in case anybody's interested. For locals, it's about 58 miles upstream. So if you're taking a tour boat, you're not going to see it.
Is it north of the Escalante?
No, it's downstream from the Escalante, about 10 miles. The Escalante's at 68 and San Juan's at 58.
David, I'm sorry, but turn around and look. Well, put your arm, you're blocking it, the whole canyon with your arm. We need to change it.
When you lean your elbow in.
We're going to be changing this probably the whole time. I'm not quite sure whether that's drifting or I'm drifting.
Well,
It'd be easier if you don't move that, because what happens is every time you move that,
can
kind
it
of
be
move
zoomed? Can it be zoomed more?
Yeah, we can zoom it in closer. You're gonna lose some of these pictures.
If you zoom it, I'll block it more.
Oh, okay.
I think Larry will end up putting it right over the top of Deep Bay tomorrow,
Okay.
you know, or later, maybe by this
That's the
afternoon.
easy way to do it if
Yeah.
you have a
He'll just string it
thing
from
to
that
do it,
and just bring it down right over the top.
What's
of it.
happening is that every time you put your left arm up, it just,
well, I've got to hold the picture. If I had a little monitor in front of me, I could see what's happening, but since the monitor's behind my head, I can't really tell.
sorry.
So it's sort of like having a hole in the back of your pants, you know, you walk around, everybody's laughing at you, but you don't know why. It's not like if your flies unzip, you can look down and say, oh yeah, but I can't just look down and say, oh, nobody can see because I'm covering the painting with my hands.
That's gonna be great.
So you'll have to let me know. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Quite well.
Okay, I'll try to maintain this position here. I don't usually, well, it depends on the subject. If I'm doing a portrait or say a building that has very complicated perspective, things like that, I'll make a really detailed drawing and then I'll transfer it, sometimes transfer paper. Something like this where I'm moving rocks, I'm moving mountains, I'm making up clouds and just kind of generally playing fast and loose with the landscape. I don't put in a lot of details. I like to develop them as I paint it. Sort of making up the image on the fly. That bothers people who are sort of obsessive compulsive about, you know, they have a photograph, they've got to work with it. Very good painter I know that's in a critique group I'm in Albuquerque says, well, it's amazed him that he got most of his best paintings from lousy photographs because it forced him to make things up.
Huh.
Okay. I don't know if you can see that. There's really not much of a drawing there. Not much detail, but kind of just sketched out the bare outlines of where I'm going with it. And as I said, I sort of expanded the the left-hand side rocks. Not a lot though. In fact, what I did was I lowered the center area a little bit and I raised up the left. I gave kind of a different perspective on the view. You'll see that more as I paint on the painting and you can actually see the shapes develop. But right now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some sky and some basic wave shapes down here. Sorry about that. Remind me to turn off my microphone if I have to sneeze.
Oh my gosh.
That's terrible. It's- Okay. Now, I generally stick with 3 colors on the palette. A red, a blue, and a yellow. And they're not always the same ones, but I try to stick with them because it unifies the painting. If I have too many colors, I have a tendency to use this set of colors on one part of the painting, that set of colors on another part of the painting, and if I'm not careful, the painting sort of falls apart. I did that one time. I was at an arts and crafts fair with my daughter, and I had this painting. It was finished, it was framed, it was up for sale, and Jennifer kept wandering back and forth looking at this painting. Finally, on about the 3rd day, she says, "So, Dad," and I always know I'm in trouble when she does that. And she points to the painting, she says, "What planet is this part of the painting from?" And I realized, I looked at it, I mean, I had used phthalo blue for part of the painting and ultramarine blue for another part of the painting, and they just didn't look like they were from the same planet at all. It was really weird. I was so close to the painting when I did it that I didn't notice. I think this time probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with ultramarine blue. That'll be my blue, and maybe raw sienna will be my yellow. And then I almost always use quinacridone magenta for my red. So those are the colors that I'm going to go with over this picture mainly. Now, I will, for accent purposes, throw in other colors that I know are going to be brighter, where I want things to have attention drawn to them, and so forth and so on. But I'd like to start out with sort of a unified color scheme. Well, I will desperately need a trash can before the end of the thing, but I'll hold off on it. Oh, thank you. Marvelous. Do all my wishes come true if I just...
It's your lottery. Lottery
We'll
note.
try to.
I don't actually play the lottery, you know. It doesn't seem like a good idea to me. Okay. Raw sienna, and I pretty much always have a little burnt sienna in these paintings, just because if you look at the rocks, there's so much of it there. Sort of hard to avoid. And ultramarine blue. And you probably noticed that I usually work with a really filthy palette. I just cleaned it up a little bit because it had gotten to be too dirty, but it's pretty dirty.
I about had a heart attack.
Hmm?
I about had a heart attack. I saw you washing your palette.
Yeah, well, once in a while you have to do that. It'll get dirty again. The advantage of having a dirty palette is you look around the painting and you say, I want that color right there, and it's on there somewhere. You match it, you know. Okay, now I need to find some quinacridone magenta. And this is a very peculiar color. Probably Sunday I'll go over this in more detail. People they'll get different colors that are called quinacridone magenta from different manufacturers. I use Winsor Newton's. and they tend to be drastically different colors. In particular, the Daniel Smith quinacridone magenta looks like what Winsor Newton calls permanent magenta, and it does not mix well with other colors. I like Winsor Newton's quinacridone magenta because it makes great oranges and great purples. It goes either way. It's a very clear red, and I can do anything I want with it. And frequently you'll find that, if you're reading an instructional article or see a demonstration or something, you go try to reproduce it. If you use a different brand of paint, it just isn't working real well. But we'll talk more about that on Sunday. Right now, I'm going to do the sky, and it's pretty much, there's one area in the cliffs towards the center of the picture that's paler than the sky and brighter. You can see right in here and down here. It's actually brighter than what the sky is. Most of the rest of the cliff area is darker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to paint water over the whole top of the picture above the horizon. And if you want to do a wet on wet wash, one thing you need to remember is that you need to allow time for the water to soak in the paint. And in the pre-work I did have a little bit of an exercise on that. I think I call it first in, last out. And this is a very, very strange thing I got in the water. My heavens, what is that? I had a tiny thread of what appears to be raw sienna paint. It's this little scribbly line across the paper, but it's coming off, so I'm not going to worry about that. Sorry for the digression. Anyway, the paper's porous. It has, fibers and clay particles and sizing and so forth and so on. When you first put water on it, of course, at the edges, it doesn't creep. You'll notice good, clean watercolor paper, you can draw a design in water, let it sit on top of the paper, and you can draw the most intricate edges, and they just stay where you put them, as long as the paper's not overworked. But where the water sits on the paper, it will soak straight down in, and it fills up all the little pores in the paper. And that's important because when you do a wet on wet wash, the paint can't immediately soak down into the porous area of the paper because there's water in there already. Okay, if I were to take paint straight out of the tube, say ultramarine blue. Now ultramarine blue is a particulate color and normally comes back off the paper pretty easily. But if I don't have water on the paper in the first place, those little particles will grind right down into the porous area between the fibers and the paper, and you'll never get them out. It leaves streaks. So to prevent streaks, I sit here and I talk and gab while the water soaks in. And it should be soaked. And I'm going to start out with some raw sienna. I know the sky's blue, but towards the horizon, if you look at the photograph or look at any real sky, it's a lot warmer, yellower, and paler than the sky up towards the zenith. And I almost always will put a strong underpainting of yellow. Raw sienna is a good color to do that because it's a mild yellow. And it also is fairly particulate. It depends on what mood you're in. If you're going to layer a picture a lot, you tend to go with colors that stain more. And if you want to go back and mess around and change things, you go with colors that are made up of ground up pigment particles, and they tend to sit on top of the paper and come off a lot easier. Pardon me if I get too technical, but it's useful to know. Watercolor is a really technical medium. It does strange things, and especially at the beginning, it will drive people insane because the water and the paint do something totally different than what you expected it to do. It's one of the things that makes it a lot more fun than oil paintings. You know, oil paintings, you put some paint on the paper and leave the room, have lunch, come back, it's right where you left it. You do that with watercolor and and the water's over here and the paint's over there and things have moved and you've got blooms and it helps to know what's actually technically happening when the paint moves around on the paper. So I'll be talking about that kind of thing at some length. Okay, what I did, as I said, is I painted an underpainting of yellowish. And again, that was this, I had the water on the paper first, filled up the pores so I didn't get streaks when I did this initial wash. And then I'll finish it up with some ultramarine blue, that's my blue. And I can put it on pretty strong because now that all that other stuff is on the paper underneath it, I can wash it off, run it off, do pretty much whatever I want here. One of the nice things about the combination of ultramarine blue and raw sienna is that it doesn't green up the way a lot of blues and yellows do together. If I use phthalo blue and Windsor yellow, I now have a bright green sky. But it isn't, you know, it's just kind of a nice mellow gray blue. And what I tend to do, especially on the very large paintings, I don't know if you can all see this. I'm just letting the water run down the painting. And I can run it back into the painting this way. Oops, see it, see it's running, paint's running down the end. Then I can run it back down that way. I'm letting gravity do the work of mixing the paint and toning the sky. Now look, I think this looks a little too pale to me. And I need to sneak back into it before it dries too much. One thing I did forget to bring was a little sprayer. Very frequently I use a little spray mist bottle, especially in the real large paintings, because they'll tend to start drying in one area before another, and you don't want a bloom to develop, so you kind of just keep them wet. So I can drop some blue back up in at the top of the picture. The sun in this painting, or this photograph, if you look, is coming from your right-hand side. Okay, so that means the sky on the left-hand side is going to be a little darker because the sun in this painting is over here somewhere. So the sky has to get a little lighter as you go towards the sun.